Hello everybody, welcome back to another video. Today I want to do some really, just theorizing. I don't usually do, I guess, these types of videos on my channel, and I figured I'd try a stab at it, because, I got a lot of thoughts swirling through this, big ol' brain of mine. So, today I just wanted to discuss some of my thoughts, those being, who will be Deltarune's final boss? I mean, it's something that is pretty important to wonder, this is a chapter release game. We're getting a bunch of things, we're getting a bunch of mysteries that, a lot of people in the community are theorizing about, and, since chapter 3 and 4 is, like, it could be less than a week away. I don't think it is, frankly. I think it's going to be a good 2 weeks, 3 weeks. Maybe that's copium, but, Deltarune chapter 3 and 4 are coming out soon, so I think this is, like, the home stretch. This is our last chances to theorize about the information we have from chapter 1 and 2 before we get, like, double the game, which is crazy to me. Anyway, with that said, I do feel like it's important to note, I don't know. I'm not saying definitively in this video that this is going to be the final boss. I'm saying who could be the final boss. I am just using the information we have, trying to, grasp at straws, make weird conjectures, I am not saying that I am completely right, because I am really just taking what we got, man, because we only have 2/7 of the story. There is not a whole lot to grasp in terms of, how the entire story is going to play out. I'm not on that level of theorization. I can't say, ooh, the next chapter is going to be, we're in the holiday house and Asgore makes a fountain for some reason. That's not me dissing people who theorize that stuff. I'm just saying I can't, because I'm not smart enough to portray the whole story. So, this is less going to be about predicting the story and more predicting of characters that we have now that would make sense to be the final boss. Or, I guess a better way to say it would be the main antagonist of sorts. And on that topic, there is probably going to be more than one final boss. At least there's a chance that there's going to be more than one final boss, since we have 2 routes to the game. But as Toby Fox has said, there is only going to be one ending, so I think that makes it almost just as likely that there is only going to be one final boss. And that's... I'm not going to be really focusing on one route or the other, unless it's like, this guy makes sense to be the final boss in, like, the weird route, but in the normal route, it makes no sense, right? And, again, just to stress it, these are my theories and opinions. I am not right. I'm not trying to tell you what to think. I'm telling you what I think. If you think differently, feel free to comment it below. I'm glad to, hear other people's opinions. That's kind of what this whole community is meant to be. So, let's just start off. What are the qualifications for a final boss? Or at least the concept of one? Well, it, needs to make sense, right? I'm not gonna say, oh, it's Newbert, because he's a twist villain at the very end. Like, that would be awesome, but it doesn't really, make sense. Newbert isn't set up as an important enough character, or just an important character, period, to have that kind of twist, right? As opposed to, I don't know, literally any other game with a twist villain. You could use Magalore from Kirby's Return to Dreamland. He's a main character, so if that game for some reason came out in chapters, it would make sense to say that he could be a twist final boss, because he's an important character. Not saying that you can't say that side characters could be twist final bosses, because that is also likely to be entirely possible. I'm just saying that currently, in terms of theorization, I am going to try my best to make sense when saying a character can be a final boss. It is possible that the final boss is going to be Newbert and is a twist villain, but I'm not going to theorize that, because we don't have any, anything for that to signify that, period. And they do need to be evil, to a certain extent, that extent being they have to be doing something that either just the protagonists go against, right? We're not going to fight someone who we have the exact same opinion as, right? Because they need a reason to oppose the protagonist, right? So, like, if it was in the weird route, they probably wouldn't be evil. We would be evil. But they do have a reason to oppose the protagonist. That being, well, I mean, you're evil. So, let's start off. Our first contestant, you know him, you love him, good old Dr. W.D. Gaster. This is probably the most common thing to hear when talking about Deltarune's final boss. If you look up, if you look up Deltarune final boss on YouTube, I think the first thing you're gonna see is actually a cover of Megalovania featuring Susie as the final boss, who I'm not gonna talk about today because I just personally don't really see that, unless it is, the weird route. But besides the point. Point is, a lot of people think it's gonna be Gaster because it's Gaster. He's watching over us. He can hear us. He's in time and space. Ooh. And, that's not me making fun of those people, although it is, but I get why those people think that, since there is a lot of stuff alluding to Gaster. Speaking of which, do we even know if Gaster's in Deltarune, right? As, I think yes. I'm gonna, try and prove that, but if you want a better video proving that, just look it up. I'm sure there's like 50 of them, but I think a more important question to ask would be, is Gaster even evil, or does Gaster have, evil intentions, or is he just being antagonistic? So, I think one of the first things we want to look towards with that is with the secret bosses, mainly what we can be told from the secret bosses, that being, Sham. If you talk to him, he talks about how Jevil, the first secret boss, was talked to by this weird entity guy that suddenly made him go insane and talk about, the world being a game, right? And, Sham says it himself. After hearing Jevil's weird ramblings, his own view of this world has become darker yet darker. The ever-iconic quote used by Gaster in the infamous Gaster room in Undertale, which, I mean, I can't really say it's, like, allegedly Gaster. It's called the Gaster room. I think that's Gaster talking. And we can also see it again with Spamton, after you beat him, you go back to his garage, you can see the Addisons, and they tell you the story about how he was fine, but then suddenly he, called the right person, and then, boom, he was big. But then that person left him, and now he's insane, kind of like Jevil. And, obviously, the thing that the last Addison says of his phone making only garbage noise, which is very similar to the dialogue that you can see if you use your phone in the Dark World. And, the same garbage noise that you hear on the phone is the exact same audio that is used in the aforementioned Gaster room. So, I think that pretty, frankly, very obviously means that Gaster is the one who's whispering all these sweet nothings to the two secret final bosses, and probably the future one, whoever that is. Now, this is going to be a bit of a side tangent, but if you don't know what this plug is, I understand. It is a, frankly, very weirdly secret part of Deltarune, which is in the Queen's basement. If you go to the very left, but don't enter the door, and wait for like a minute or two, the plug on the wall will just start smiling for some reason. If you go up close to it, it attacks you because the wires do that, and then its just face turns to normal, which, atomically, that doesn't really make too much sense, because, like, it's a plug. Shouldn't mean the very tips of it became... you know what? Never mind. Point is, I think, personally, this kind of looks a bit like Gaster, with having, its right eye be lower than its left, and also a weird grin on its face, So, and alongside that, these two things. We don't know if this is Gaster, but it's highly presumed. If you don't know what these are, the one on the left is a face that can be seen in Queen's basement for, like, I think, less than a second, because you walk over to the left and then it just disappears. I think you'll probably see it, but you won't see what it is, right? And a lot of people think that's Gaster, because the only other person who has those kind of eyes is Spamton, and Spamton's probably not in the basement, because if he was, we wouldn't need to be in there, right? And the one on the right is... I'm not going to explain the whole thing, but it was part of the Spamton sweepstakes. If you don't know what that is, again, it's probably a better video to be watching about it. But one of the links led to this area with a bunch of doors. One of the doors just had that chair that I have resting atop the eyes, and if you clicked it a bunch, it went dark, and then I'm pretty sure the caption was, but what if it could get darker than dark, yet again, connecting it to Gaster. And then also, if you clicked it a bunch, the chair would disappear, and those eyes would appear before kicking you out. So, that mixed up with the what if it could get darker than dark, kind of links those eyes to Gaster, therefore linking the other eyes to Gaster. Right? I'm not insane, I think. Finally, another thing I want to show. When Rousey first describes the prophecy, he says it was foretold by time and space, which is, you know, ambiguous, right? We don't really know what that is, but the only other time in the whole Undertale franchise that I believe is the only time we've been told about time and space is by one of the Gaster followers, which says that Gaster was shattered across time and space. So, you know, my personal interpretation of this is that Gaster is telling Rousey, he told Rousey the prophecy, both of, or, well, at the very least, the one of the three heroes, you know? And I don't know if he told him about the roaring. The roaring just seems to be kind of known, but then again, literally isn't, because the queen didn't know, and she's the queen. So, that's kind of weird, right? But anyway, so we have all this, and we can tell from this that Gaster is probably in Deltarune, and is maybe evil, because he's seems to be watching us, but, and is also, you know, telling Jevil, Spamton, presumably maybe Rousey, all these things, but problem is, he can't just be evil and you can just call him the final boss, right? Because when you get down to it, all of that stuff that we know is completely optional. It is possible for someone to play both Undertale and Deltarune in their current entirety and not even know that there's this guy telling people this stuff, right? So, from a story and writing standpoint, if Gaster is the final boss, Gaster would need to be part of the actual game as a character other than just this weird overarching entity, which I personally do believe is going to happen, right? I think that is what's going to... I think Gaster, whether that be in Chapter 3, 4, 5, I think it has to be in those, because to have the final boss be actually introduced in Chapter 6 wouldn't really make too much sense, but maybe it would, and I'm just dumb. Point is, I think Gaster makes sense to be the final boss. It just matters of, are we actually going to get him as a character, or is he just going to be a background entity? Because I think we're going to get him as an actual character, personally. But hey, that's just me. I don't really know a whole lot. Anyway, that's it for Gaster. Our second one is the good old fluffy boy, Rousey. Who is, you know, I don't know if he's evil. I can't tell. In fact, I can't really tell anything about this guy. What is he? Who is he? Oh, I think he's a goat. He says he's the Prince of Dark. What does that mean? He's very weird, and I can't tell. It's hard to tell if the story's intentionally hiding these secrets, right? Because personally, I think they are, but, like, you know, he just shows up in another dark world. Susie's like, how'd you get here? He's like, oh, I felt the darkness, and I came over. And Susie's just like, yeah, that makes sense. I trust him. I trust him. And, you know, I get it. But, you know, he's just very confusing, because not a lot of people even recognize his existence. He also tells us just a lot of stuff. Because what does that stuff mean? Why are you telling us this stuff? You're hiding a lot, buddy. So, yeah, like I said previously, time and space, that's how he found out the prophecy, but we don't really know what time and space is. It's possible that Rousey himself doesn't know what time and space is either, but he might, because, you know, that's probably Gaster, which means Rousey might know Gaster. So, does that mean Rousey's evil? You know, how... Sorry, Rousey is just a really confusing character when it comes to it from a story standpoint, because, you know, they can travel from one dark world to another, you know, they just know Chris and Susie's names, which, like, you know, why, you know, why, you know, these people, I mean, Chris kind of makes sense. They were the only human in the vicinity, so if you can somehow, whatever you are in the light world, which what even are you in the light world, people think you're Chris's headband that they wore to try and be a monster, which is a lot sadder than it is. Or, no, it's just sad. You know? Is Rousey Chris's human OC? I just thought about that. I think Rouse... You know what? That's my theory. Rouse is Chris's OC. Monster OC. Which, again, is very sad. But, anyway, off topic. Why Susie specifically, right? Like I said, they could know of Chris's name because they are the only human that we've seen in the vicinity. So maybe they somehow found that out. But Susie? Like no one else? You just Susie. Like, I'm pretty sure they don't know Noelle's name. Maybe. Do they know Noelle's name? Do they even talk about to Noelle? They never talk to Noelle. Noelle barely his existence. Which brings up another thing. Why does no one ever talk about Rouse? And is Rouse Asriel? Is he? Ugh. Anyway, I don't think he's Asriel. Based off the simple fact that, in my personal perspective of the game, I think it's very obvious that Rouse has feelings for Chris, and, you know, they're brothers, Chris and Asriel, so, I mean, I'm just speaking from a personal standpoint, but if my brother ever did some of the stuff that Rouse says to Chris, I would be a little less than comfortable, to put it lightly. I think. No, I know. That sounded weird. I was trying to make it seem dramatic. You know what? Whatever. Is the prophecy true? Sorry. I've been rambling about the prophecy a bit this video. About how time and space and stuff. And I think the prophecy does have some lenience to it. Like, I think the general idea of people, the three heroes, coming together and sealing the fountains, I think that's true. Ish. Cause, like, how do you know? How do we know that? Like, is there gonna be, like, is everything predetermined? Is that what it is? Is the whole no choice that's how far the no choice thing is. That's my prediction. As of my other prediction. I'm making two predictions. I think that the prophecy is true in that it's going to happen, right? Because we know Chris is getting controlled. Whoever's controlling Chris is probably the one who wants to make the prophecy happen, right? And, you know, with that, if the prophecy is true, wouldn't Rouse want the roaring? Because, like, the whole prophecy itself revolves around the idea that the roaring happens. So, if they want the prophecy to be true, wouldn't they kind of, like, want that? Wouldn't they want Birdley to make the whole roaring happen? Which, you know, makes sense in concept, but then you kind of realize that the three heroes are kind of weak. They're not weak, but, like, not, like, Titan strong from the stuff that we've read about the Titans, and that I think Rouse also kind of just wants it to happen naturally, right? That, or Rouse just never picks up the fact that the Angel's Heaven and the roaring are probably the same thing, right? So, I think it's either, one, he wants it to happen naturally, he doesn't want to, you know, rush things, he wants to make sure everyone's strong enough, or two, Rouse, much like a surprising amount of characters in this game, are really, really dumb. Speaking of being really dumb, I'm gonna make a big hypothetical. Boom. I love big things, and this hypothetical's big. That's why I like it. And that hypothetical is the roaring is gonna get prevented before it happens. Right? Like, we find the knight, and we're like, no, person who is the knight, you don't have to kill everyone. And the knight's like, oh my god, I'm so sorry, I'm not going to kill everyone. And Rouse is like, but then the roaring won't happen, so I'll do it myself. I think Rouse is gonna start the roaring. I think Rouse is going to go crazy. I think they're gonna be, oh my god, I have to make the prophecy true. I'm gonna go stab my scarf into the earth, and I'm going to start the roaring. Boom. I just predicted the entirety of Deltarune. I know I said I wasn't going to, but I did. But yeah, that's just, I think Rouse could definitely be the final boss. It just matters the circumstances, because I don't personally see Rouse as being fully evil, right? I think Rouse is being truthful to us in that they're not telling us everything, but I don't think that's really on purpose. If that make sense, in which I hope it does. Anyway, our third contestant is going to be a bit less, obvious, or bit more, I guess I'd say, bit more out there than the theories that people have made about Gaster and Rouse, and that is Rules Card. Ho ho. I'm never doing that voice again, unless he's important in Chapter 3, which would make sense to an extent. Anyway, Rules Card has been a character that some people have been theorizing to be more important than he's leading on, because, Rules is kind of a bumbling dumbo, and it, when you see him in Chapter 1, you kind of think, oh, that's, probably going to be it, but then he's in Chapter 2, and, he has a, he's not that big in it, but he has a whole fight, which he did not have in Chapter 1. So, like, why, I think it's just, it's weird that, I get why Lancer seems to be a recurring character. He's, like, part of the gang, but Rules, he's just kind of here. I mean, I get he's kind of, meant to be watching Lancer since he's his quote-unquote lesser father, but I just think it's weird to an extent that of all characters, Rules is the one who seems to be one of the recurring ones, right? And, speaking on his boss fight, after you beat it, he does this. He glows really big and says he's going to use the relay power of Rules Card. And, this could be a one-off bit, but, from what we've, already seen in Undertale, people are used to, theorizing that the joke characters are probably really powerful and can actually destroy half the world and are invincible and can do everything. True? I don't know. Also, this next point's a bit stupid, but it's something I noticed. Rules Card does take longer to turn into a statue than Lancer does. And, this could just be because, I guess, Rules has more, power, presumably, than Lancer, so maybe the amount of darkness in him lasts longer, Or this means nothing, because in the weird route, they both turn into stone relatively at the same time. So this is just, like I said, Rules doesn't actually have a lot when it comes to actually theorizing that he could be the final boss, right? All we really have is him powering up before turning to stone, which is only to his head, which, could mean something. Ooh, his head is going to be the final boss. He's going to get decapitated, and we're going to have to fight just his head. That's my theory. But yeah, this next point is stupid. I was trying to find out stuff to talk about for Rules Card, because like I said, there's some, but there isn't too much substantial stuff. And, someone pointed out that, Rules, his sprites are kinda similar to Sans in that he's always smiling, in all the sprites he's in. I kind of, got this specific pose of Sans for this image just because it lined up. I don't think that means anything. I get, the idea, because I don't think Rules has ever had a sad face, right? And, I just think that's curious, because, like I said, the only other character who has that trait is Sans, right? He's smiling and, like, literally everything. His mouth never moves, and that could be because he's a skeleton. So, I don't know. I think Rules just doesn't really make too much sense. Plus, the fact that he has no real reason to fight the protagonist in, like, a serious way that would mean he could be the final boss. Though I do definitely see him being, at the very least, an actual boss in the weird route of the game, since we know he has some sort of power, and at least in the weird route, he has reason to fight you. That being, you're a little bit psycho. Which, I guess you are also a little bit psycho in the main game, because you're controlling a teenager, but I mean, that's just what I think. I think Rules Card is going to be a boss in the weird route, but I think in the main route, he's not really going to be much of anything. Anywho, on to number 4. Sorry, I don't know why I breathed really into my mic. I was gonna make a joke about Christmas, but then I just breathed into my mic. I'm really sorry. Noelle is our contestant number 4, and what is, you know, in my opinion, I think Noelle is the most likely one. I think Noelle makes the most sense at being the final boss, and I'm gonna tell you why. Boom. Boom. Ooh. Ah. Her dad's gonna die. I'm calling it right now. Her dad's gonna die. And, you know, that's gonna make her go a little insane, right? Because, you know, if my dad died, I would probably be, you know, a little upset. I'd probably be more upset if my sister was missing, and my mom was, whatever her mom is. I think we're probably gonna find out more about that in Chapter 4, because Chapter 4 seemed like a Noelle holiday house. But, yeah. I think her dad's gonna die, and she's gonna go a little bit psycho, and she's gonna create a giant dark fountain. Right? Where it's just her dad's alive, you know? Good old Des. Des has been missing, and that's a whole thing, you know? Lost girl, find her. Which could also be something we do in the game. Maybe we find Des, and Noelle's like, oh my god, Des, I love you. But then Des is like, oh my god, I'm the knight, and I hate you! I don't think she's gonna do that. I'm just rambling. But, you know. Berdly is dead. We've seen that Noelle does indeed have the power to do, you know, a lot of damage. So, both with the fact that, you know, obviously it seems like she wants to make the world a dark world to, you know, some extent, and the fact that she has the power to, or capability to be really powerful, would make sense for her being a final boss, you know, in terms of, like, you know, gameplay, too. So I think Noelle is going to create the fountain after her dad dies, which brings about the roaring, and it covers the entirety of Hometown in darkness, which then transforms it into Noelle's own perfect version of Hometown. Right? I think we're Persona 5 roiling it up in here. I think it's just going to be the perfect world for Noelle, right? And then we, as the protagonists, we don't really like that, so we're gonna go try and stop her. You know, we're gonna banish the angel's heaven, which is the roaring, but also on that, the term the angel's heaven is really interesting, because the angel is this religious, Christ-like figure in the Deltarune universe, and we don't really know, you know, who or what that is, but the roaring being a heaven, specifically, heaven is meant to be this big, grand place, you know? So, it being heaven, the roaring itself being heaven, being a little heaven of Hometown, heaven's hometown, Hometown heaven. That's what Chapter 7 is going to be called, Hometown heaven, calling it now. That's just interesting, right? I think that that's probably the main reason that's the main thing that makes me think that the final chapter is going to be the entirety of Hometown covered in darkness in Noelle's own little heaven, which would also mean that Noelle is the angel, which is not something new. There has been many hints that Noelle could be the angel, like this dialogue here when she's on her little date with Susie in the Ferris wheel. She talks about jumping out the window and growing huge, big angel wings, and just fly as far as I can, free as a bird. And, you know, I'm pretty sure Spampton in the Weird Route also refers to as an angel. And, you know, one of the main, bigger, recent ones, this little, excerpt from the secret website on Toby Fox's, what is currently the most recent newsletter, you know, which also, fun fact, gives us our first and only line of December holiday dialogue. That's pretty neat. But more importantly, it's talking about having a competition with Chris of making giant snow angels. You know, she wants to have the biggest wings of all. She also wants it to snow whenever she wants, which again would probably be in this perfect version of Hometown. That is the angel's heaven, because Noelle is the angel, and her heaven is a perfect version of Hometown. So, yeah. I think Noelle is probably the most likely character to be the final boss. I'm not saying that she is going to be the final boss. I just think that if she is the final boss, I was right. I think just with everything that we have right now, she's probably the most likely to be the final boss. At least in my opinion. Next up, I believe number 5. Good old Chris Dreamer. Which, you know, a bit of a side tangent here. Y'all ever wonder what Toriel's last name is? Because we know that Asgore's is Dreamer in both Undertale and Deltarune. And that's why we call, you know, Asriel Dreamer and Chris Dreamer. But technically, you know, we don't know what Toriel's last name is. Because if they got divorced, you know, it wouldn't be Toriel Dreamer. They're divorced. But side tangent, Chris. Chris obviously has us inside of them. Not in a weird way, but in the, you know, friend inside me way. Sorry. But yeah. Chris has reasonable motivation to go against us. I mean, we are inside of them, we are controlling them, and they are very clearly not that happy about it due to whatever they do in Chapter 1, and I don't know, are they cutting a pie? Probably, but why they gotta make it all look creepy like that? And also, in Chapter 2, they go off and make a whole, you know, dark fountain, so, you know, they don't really like us, for, you know, understandable reasons. So, that gives them opposition to, reason to appease us. Appease, yes, appease. That's what Chris was cutting. But, another little interesting thing I've noticed is that, well, does this sometimes. That's what Chris does sometimes. They've done this before. They have ripped out their soul before, which implies that Chris has known how to rip out their soul for a long time, which implies that why haven't they, you know, boom, why haven't they just taken it out yet? Why haven't they just, you know, locked the gate, thrown away the key? Why do they need us? Which is important to think about, because that, again, that means that they need us. So, I think the main problem standing in the way of Chris being the final boss is the fact that Chris, without the heart, can't really happen. At least presumably, right? Them being the final boss can't really happen if they're just, you know, dying the entire time. Because it seems like they might need the soul to live. And so, the soul has to be inside them for them to, you know, fully function. Which, you know, really brings into question what the role of souls are in this universe. But, you know, I'm not here to answer that question. I'm sure someone else already has. So, you know, it would be neat if Chris, the main protagonist, was the final boss. But currently, doesn't really make the most sense. So, yeah. I don't think Chris is going to be the final boss. I think it would be neat to have Chris be the final boss. But, you know, just from a story standpoint, it's a bit impossible. Now, number 6, our 6th victim. They might as well be victims with how much I'm talking about them. The Soul. You are going to be the final boss. Except, no you aren't. I don't think there's a world where you are the final boss. Thematically, it just makes no sense for the Soul to be the final boss, because the whole, you know, nuance, I guess, of wrong game, Deltarune. The whole nuance of Deltarune is that you aren't playing as Chris, you are playing as the Soul. So, you're the final boss, you're fighting yourself. What is this, Amori? You know, it doesn't really make sense. Anywho, on to one who makes even less sense, Alvin. Do you know who Alvin is? I hope you do, because he's a major side character, I would say. Well, not major, I mean, he is to the side to a major amount, in that he has only 2 appearances in the game, which is the 2 times you can walk around Hometown. So, just to fill everyone in, Alvin is the son of Gerson Boom, who, if you don't know, is this turtle from Undertale. He is in the shop, he tells you a lot of things, like, you know, Asgore before he started killing humans, and, he tells you about the Deltarune in the first place. You know, he name drops the thing, but, you know, the thing with Gerson in this universe, he is dead. Gerson Boom is not alive in this universe, whether that be, you know, he's too old so he just died, or, I don't know, maybe he got a hit put on him. who knows? But we do know Gerson does have a child, and that child is Alvin. So we know that connection. We know Gerson seems to be weirdly important in the Deltarune universe, because, you know, you go to hometown, you walk around and just interact with random things, chances are you'll hear about Gerson Boom for one reason or another. So, on that note, it is also weird to say that Gerson and Alvin aren't the only Boom family members that we know about, because this very one specific line of Birdly near the end of chapter 2 says that he's going to be late with his shift with Miss Boom. When I first read this, I thought he was talking about Alvin, because I'm sexist and only women can have pink hair. I'm joking. Obviously, I hope. But yeah, no. This is someone completely different than Alvin. So, is it another child, or is it Gerson's wife? Because, you know, I mean, you know, presumably Gerson married a woman to have a child, I think? I don't know. But, you know, it's possible that Miss Boom is Gerson's wife, which I think could make some sense, but, you know, I think one of the things here is that you have to see it's Miss Boom and not Mrs. Boom, which, I mean, I don't know if someone's husband dies, the Mrs. turns to Miss immediately, probably, but also, another thing is death in the universe of Undertale is a bit of a weird topic when it comes to, you know, monsters, because some of them can just kind of, you know, live forever. Boss monsters can if they never have a child. So, you know, that's a little weird. And, you know, from what it looks like, Alvin already seems, you know, relatively old. I mean, they have what seems to be a beard, you know? So, Miss Boom is either really, really, really old, or it's Gerson's other child. So I personally think Miss Boom is Gerson's wife. Bit of a side tangent there. Either way, back to Alvin. Alvin is the priest, I believe, of the church, right? Of the Deltarune Church. He talks about, the angel's forgiveness. So that already puts him in the stage of being an antagonist. I mean, we don't like the angel, you know. It's kind of mutually agreed on in the group. We want to stop the angel's heaven. That's the whole thing. Which also brings into question, like, do neither Chris and Susie realize that, like, Rouse is basically saying, oh, we should kill God? Because, you know, Chris seems to follow the angel. I mean, at the very least, we know Noelle and Des did, because they went to the youth group. And, you know, I think everybody in this dang city probably goes to this one church. Since this is the only church we see, probably means everyone in the city follows the angel. Dude, both from the fact that, you know, they all go to that church, and also the Deltarune, which is talking about the angel, is everywhere. So, you know, we're kind of going up against religion here. So, that makes sense that Alvin has a reason to fight us, because we're saying, I think we hate God, and Alvin's like, how about no, I'm gonna kill you, or something like that. Also, this is a weird line of dialogue. In the graveyard, in chapter 2, if you talk to Alvin about, I believe, the hammer, he talks about how it's a ritual, at least to some extent, to bury a hammer under someone's grave. And, you know, as you're walking away, he pops this, like, were you proud of me, father? And is it right for this hammer to... Which is, you know, very weird to an extent. Because, like, I think this implies that Alvin does have more to the story than is surface level, right? Because he's weird, I guess. Because, you know, we see him in chapter 1. He doesn't have a sprite, you know, so just kind of assume he's unimportant. But then in chapter 2... he has this weird line of dialogue when you're running away from him. Or, not running. Well, hey, I mean, you probably are, but... it's just weird. And another weird thing... this is a really stupid point to bring up. The church, obviously, is meant to symbolize the Deltarune, with the windows probably being the wings, and, I guess, either the thing at the very top, kind of... I mean, the thing at the very top is meant to be the angel, but you could also say the middle is meant to represent the angel. But yeah, I think the church, like many things in this game, is meant to represent the Deltarune. Though, funnily enough, I want to make a point. The Deltarune, the 2 arrows specifically, represent Chris and Susie as Lighteners, and the lower one represents Ralsei, right? And he's standing in the middle. I think Alvin's a Darkener. Not really. I don't. But I do think it is interesting that the middle door here definitely has more of the dark style, like, art style, I guess, that is seen in, like, Hometown. Right? No, that's not what it's called. Castletown. I'm dumb. I'm sorry. That is seen in Castletown. It kind of has that art direction. So, I think that's what it's going for. And, you know, obviously, I don't think it's supposed to be saying that Alvin's a Darkener. Because if it is, then we have to also say that Terry's a Darkener. Because Terry is standing there in Chapter 2, talking about how he doesn't need to pee. Whatever. I just think it's an interesting thing to point out. I don't think Alvin's a Darkener. But, yeah, no. At the end of the day, there isn't really a whole lot to say of Alvin being the final boss. Other than Alvin's religious and has something more to him. And it'd be interesting, but I really don't know. Anyway, next up, this little bugger. Ooh, I got a gift for him. Look at him, he's moving. I love Sham so much. I love him so much. He is so awesome. Oh my god, I love cats. Anyway, so Sham, right? He obviously has his connections to Jevil, with him being his, like, partner, and also being the one to seal him away, which, in and of itself, shows that Sham has power, right? Unless if Jevil was, you know, willingly put away, which would kind of make sense, you know? But, also along that, Jevil also has his weird stuff with Spampton, with, you know, if you don't know what that is, that's a excerpt from the Spampton Q&A in which he was asked about Jevil, and he talks about how he cheated on him. So I guess Jevil and Spampton are exes, but besides that, that does link Sham to both Spampton and Jevil, which, or I suppose, links Sham to Spampton through Jevil, I think would be the better way to say it. So, we know that there's some weird stuff going on between there. There's some stuff going on with Jevil and Spampton, some weird stuff going on with Sham and Jevil. I don't know. Maybe they're polyamorous. What do I know? But another thing is that these little shadow crystals also, you know, connect Jevil and Spampton with the fact that these are the things that you can get by beating the secret bosses. And, you know, this is actually the official sprite for them that was added within the test, which, you know, neat little fun fact. But yeah, that's the actual sprites used for the shadow crystals in the game test. Besides the point. Those are the shadow crystals, and Sham is collecting them off of us, right? He's grabbing them off of us, he is keeping them for safekeeping or something, and they're very confusing in terms of their power. I mean, look at here. In the top right, I have the very first one is what happens when you use it in the Chapter 1 Dark World, and the second one was what happens when you look at it in the Chapter 2 Light World. So, we don't really know what this is. You know, in the first one, it shows, like, you know, what the room really is. So maybe it shows the truth, but in the second one, it shows Susie glaring at us coldly, which is weird, because it seems it's very expressed on us that Chris and Susie are now very good friends, right? We know that some of the actions that Chris does without our, you know, interjection makes it seem that they, at the very least, want to be genuine friends with Susie. So, if it shows the truth, why is Susie glaring at us coldly? Seems a little out of character. But, you know, all that is just to say, we don't really know what the power of the shadow crystals are, we just assume they're powerful. Which brings up the question, you know, why does Sham want this, right? I mean, we know he knows that the world is a game, to at the very least some extent, right? Because Jevil's rambling about it, so obviously he's heard about it. So, he makes it very clear to us that the world is a little bit doomed, right? He understands that the roaring is probably going to happen, And, you know, he understands that the world that he's in is very, I guess, confined, I should say. So, is the reason that he's collecting these shadow crystals is that he wants to use them for himself? You know, maybe he gets all 7, turns into Super Sham, and then tries to break out of the confined world he's in? Or does he want to stop you from using the shadow crystals, in which that you would use them to break out of your own little world? Does he want to stop you from breaking out of his world? Or does he want to break out of his world from himself, right? And also, you know, again, bit of a side tangent. This is the somewhat kind of official full design of Sham. It was in what is still the currently most recent newsletter, and, you know, it's, you know, pretty basic. You know, I didn't add the wizard energy thing there. That was just part of the screenshot. You know, very rough draft. It was drawn just so that they could use it for the plushie. And, you know, one of the things Toby says is that he had to make the design, which some people have been using as a way to say that Sham won't be the final boss, because if Sham was going to be the final boss, he would have already needed an official design, right? So, I get where they're coming from, but at the end of the day, I don't think that really matters all too much. Though, I will say, this little excerpt of Toby talking about the design does feel very interesting in terms of his character, like the dusty magic that twinkles like broken dreams and torn off by cruel and loving hands. It's weird, I should say. But that probably means nothing. So, with Sham, I think him being the final boss does make sense. It's just, a lot of it is down to just presumptions, right? Which, you know, a lot of this video is. It's just, we don't know too much about Sham's character to say anything concrete, right? And then finally, the final contender is that I just don't know. Or we just don't know. Because the final one is just, it's a character that we just straight up haven't met yet, right? Not, and I have the redacted sprite there, not saying that it's particularly redacted, but maybe it's just a character we just have not met yet and barely know anything about. Like, maybe it's a character that we've heard about, but we haven't particularly seen. I have a little list here. You know, there's Gaster, who I've discussed earlier, but does technically fall into this category. You know, Des. There's a lot of theory that Des could be the knight, which I wouldn't say has the most sustenance behind them, but, you know, you gotta take what you can get. Pluie, we don't even know if Pluie's a real character. There's theories that Pluie is just, you know, Toby's way of saying PlayStation UI. So that's really just gonna have to wait for, is Pluie even a real character, or is that a little joke? And then there's C Holiday, which is the mayor, right? The C comes from the little note that Asgore gets, and Holiday is from the fact that we know that they're neighbors. That they're neighbors with Chris. And we know Chris's neighbors are just, you know, the Holidays. That, or, you know, the mayor is actually a cat. Which, you know, I mean, hey, I love it. Maybe the mayor's Shaw. I don't know. But yeah, it's highly presumed that the mayor is Noelle's mom. So, you know, it would make kind of sense due to the fact that we know the Holiday family has something else going on with them. So, you know, her being the final boss would make sense. And I previously mentioned Mrs. Boom. It's just, you know, she literally is only mentioned once, I believe. I also got it wrong. It's Miss Boom, not Mrs. Boom, because her husband died. There's also the knight, which I talked about before. It could be that the knight, you know, starts the roaring, and then we have to fight the knight, right? Mike, which is the weird man that Spampton talks about, which frankly I think we're probably gonna hear more about in chapter 3 and 4 than we are, like, you know, end game stuff, because, you know, the stuff that Jevil hints about is both the knight and Queen, who we've, you know, already had Queen's whole arc. Then there's also the Titans, who, if you don't know, are the creatures who are said to come up from the earth during the roaring, so it makes sense if the roaring happens and then the final boss is just, you know, the big creatures that we have to fight. Now, Everyman, and I have kinda there, because we do kinda see Everyman, we just don't know what Everyman is. If you don't know what Everyman is, he's that weird little guy that I believe first shows up in in Undertale, the fight against the bird amalgamate, I think it's called Reaper Bird. The weird little, I guess, fattish, plumpish kind of guy with a little, like, nose sticking out and a hole in his head. He appears a weird amount in Deltarune. You know, he has a chance of appearing in one of Jevel's attacks. He has one of the ads when you're fighting the ad enemy. He has a chance of appearing as one of the Redditors during Queen's online discourse attack. He does appear without a chance in the or I shouldn't say all those have random chances of ever seeing, but the only, I think, concrete one that we've ever seen in Deltarune is in the back alley. If you go to the back alley in the home world where the crocodile is, on the wall you can see like a spray painted everyman with the caption everyman next to it. And, you know, we don't really know what everyman is, right? We've seen them, but we don't really know what they are. You know, this theory is that everyman is just the monster's version of a stick figure, which I think makes the most sense, but I don't know. Then the Eggman, who again, you know, Chris has probably seen. You know, we haven't seen through the perspective of camera, but yeah. For those who don't know, Eggman's the man that appears in the egg rooms, who gives you the egg. And we don't really know who that is. There's theories that it's Gaster, theories that it's Gaster again. You know, all we know about them is they can give you an egg, and they are probably a lightener, because there's a piece of dialogue at the very start of Chapter 2 when they're having the car jam. If you've collected the egg from Chapter 1, if you go up to the car in Chapter 2, it talks about how there's a man in there who smiles and waves at you, which shows that they recognize you. So it's plausible, and, you know, probably just that the Eggman is a lightener. So, you know, just, you know, food for that. And, you know, again, it could also be anyone else. It could straight up just be a character we just haven't seen or heard about yet. Like a completely new character. And so, I think a perfect way to end this video, I'm going to show everyone the real final boss of Deltarune. It's not a character that we've seen before. We don't even know that they exist. I believe the final boss of Deltarune is going to be Zenith Fectosinartphilus. Yes, you heard that right. The final boss of Deltarune. Zenith Fectosinartphilus. Look at them. My glorious. Yeah, no, I don't know. I just don't know. Which is kind of the whole... That's just, you know, big summary of this whole video. I don't know who the final boss of Deltarune is going to be. I think it's going to be Noelle, personally. But, you know, that's just me. I don't know if it's going to be a character that we haven't seen before. I don't think Zenith Fectosinartphilus is going to be an actual character. Because, you know, it's 1/3 a fan game character and another third a Kirby character. And also just a joke. I'm not serious about that. If you think I'm serious about that, I think you have better things to be worrying about. But yeah, no, I don't know, man. I don't know. But hey, if you think you know, put it in the comments. I'd love to see your opinion. You know, do you think Rules is going to be the final boss? Do you think he's going to turn into a giant Gaster Blaster? I sure hope so. Either way, I'll see you in the next one. If you like this video, please like it, please subscribe. Let me know that, you know, this kind of just, you know, me making a stupid Google slideshow and rambling without a script. I don't have a script, if you couldn't tell. You probably could. Bad idea. Should have made a script. Besides the point, you know, you can't judge me. Yeah, if you like this type of video, let me know. I'll probably make some more. But other than that, I'll see y'all in the next one. Ciao.